Share it with your friends too.
That's beautiful.
What you say? So, download the KBLA 1580 app today and take us with you wherever you go. KBLA Talk 1580.
You are now rocking with the best.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Yo, what's up? No, my brother. Not today. I'm on my way somewhere. Now, let me tell you a little story, man. What happened to me not that long ago, yo. Check this out. See, I was looking for God at my grandmama's house. Underneath the cushions on the couch, I looked all around, side to side, up and down. That man was nowhere to be found. So I called my grandmama on the phone, said, "Old lady, you best get home, 'cause God ain't where you said he would be. And there's something that I really need to speak with him about." Immediately, she said, "Boy, tell Granny what's wrong. Is there something I can do?"
I'm Tavis Smiley. This is KBLA Talk 1580. Our phone number, 1-800-920-1580, 1-800-920-1580. Glad to have you with us in this hour. Although traditional therapy can be beneficial for people who are trying counseling services for the first time, it might actually be inadequate for others who might need an oppression-focused approach. Black and brown folks cannot just think their way out of racism and oppression. To believe so is simply myopic and, for that matter, Eurocentric. Considering then how many facets of our lives have been in some ways, shapes, or forms colonized, it's not all that shocking to realize that therapy itself has fallen victim to colonization. I am pleased to be joined for a conversation in this hour by a clinical psychologist and author of the book, the forthcoming text, in fact, Decolonizing Therapy, Oppression, Historical Trauma, and Politicizing Your Practice, Dr. Jennifer Mullan. Dr. Jennifer Mullan, how are you today?
I am wonderful. Thank you so much for having me, Tavis. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's an honor to have you on. Thank you for your time. Let me jump right in. I had never thought when I saw this text come across my desk again, and we'll talk about when it drops and how folk can pre-order it. And I'm always honored. Let me just start by saying this: I'm always honored when people respect the work we're trying to do here and the work I've tried to do enough to come on to talk to me about a book before it even comes out. So thank you for the honor of talking to you before the book even drops. That means a lot to me and to the station, and more important to our audience. But I never thought about this until I saw, again, news of your text about to come out. And that is to say, I never processed this idea that given all the other parts of our lives that have in fact been colonized, that therapy itself likely is colonized. And that thought sort of jolted me for a couple of reasons. One, because I hadn't had it before. But secondly, because there's so many more, as you well know, so many more African Americans now who have therapists. I'm this radio station, as you know, is flagship in Los Angeles, heard across the country, but flagship here in LA. And in LA, it's like a rite of passage. Everybody in this town has a therapist, and now they talk about it all the time, right? But my therapist told me, my therapist said. Everybody's got a therapist, and they're always quoting their therapist. And so it's to the point now where everybody black I know has a therapist. I know black therapists who have therapists. So everybody's talking to somebody, it seems. And so I said it's almost like a rite of passage. But it had never occurred to me that if, in fact, therapy has been colonized like everything else, then what are these black people being subjected to when they go in to engage in these private counseling and conversation sessions? But that's just me. I mean, I love when I have a new thought, but I just never processed it in that way. That's me. But tell me more about why I should have been thinking about this prior to.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that beautiful introduction. And I love when we have new thoughts. Yeah. And I know for me personally, as someone who has been trained within a highly Eurocentric Western system that I deeply, deeply loved and appreciated, I began to realize just how much I was impacted by structures of whiteness and colonization. And one of these ways in which I was deeply impacted was how I was taught to, quote unquote, treat people. And I even want us to think about the language for a second. How are we being asked to treat people. We're not in a hospital 9 times out of 10 going to therapy, right? We're not necessarily, there's not something so-called wrong with us, but the way that we are trained currently puts the onus on individuals, right? The way that we're currently trained continues to enable systems, healthcare across what is now known as the United States of America, to blame individuals, to look at whatever is going on in our body, minds, and spirits as a personal, individual, psychological issue, as opposed to a really healthy, understandable reaction to what is happening environmentally, right? To what is happening because of racism, sexism, classism, ... right?
Yeah.
And so mental health has been colonized at its root. We can go back, and I won't bore everyone, but with Dr. Cartwright, right? Literally, quote unquote, treating and operating on enslaved Africans, lobotomizing, literally saying that there's something wrong with individuals and pathologizing our people and our identities, how we sing, how we dance, how we come together in support of one another, because it was different than, and because they were trying to make that coin, right? So a lot of current day mental health and therapies is couched in structures and systems that are closely related to violence of our people. And so although therapy can be amazing, don't get me wrong, therapy got me through a lot of hard years of my life.
Yeah.
Right? Right? But it's important to realize whose gaze is focused on, right? Whose mental health and bodies are really focused on. And even when I think about all the individuals whose names that many of us can cite off the top of our heads, right? Whether you're a social worker, psychologist, psychiatrist, counselor, it's usually older white men, right? Freud, Jung, Bandura, Ellis, any of us that are therapists can spout off names, and all of them, almost all of them, are older white men who we have to assume are probably cisgendered and likely heterosexually identified. And so decolonizing therapy is asking us to look at the history, not to get stuck in it, right? Not to get stuck in it, because we know that we can, right?
Yeah.
It can get really heavy, but to acknowledge, for those of us that are Black, Indigenous, racialized, people of color, right? It's asking us instead to say, hey, how is my history, how is my people's history impacted who I am today, how I think, how I do relationship or avoid relationship, right? What is my propensity for what we call depression or anxiety or anger?
Yeah.
And how that is often pathologized with the white gaze.
We are just getting started in this hour talking about that normative white gaze. We are talking in this hour, will be, about the colonization of mental health, and for that matter, if I can put it this way, mental health and mental health, and all the structures and systems that you heard Dr. Jennifer Mullan mention a moment ago, vis-a-vis what happens when we Black people go lay on the couch, sit in a chair, whatever you do, when you're talking to your therapist. And again, as I said a moment ago, I never processed it in this way. If everything else that we have to endure and everything else we have to inhabit is colonized in its own way, then why have we never considered that the way we are treated when we talk to therapists is not also colonized? And so pleased to be joined by Dr. Jennifer Mullan. Her book is called Decolonizing Therapy, Oppression, Historical Trauma, and Politicizing Your Practice. It ain't even out yet, but she's on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about. Good thing we've got 3 hours. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, Maisha Cairo here, KBLA, live at Chase Bank on Crenshaw and Vernon for the In This Together tour with female business owners, a day of empowerment, community panels, and best of all, tips on building business from marketing to capital. Today, I was able to speak with Ola Wadibia, VP of Women on the Move. Hi, Ola. Tell me a bit about this initiative by JP Morgan Chase, founded in 2013.
Women on the Move is a center of excellence at JP Morgan Chase in our global DEI organization, where we really focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. What's really awesome about Chase's approach is that all of our centers of excellence, and there's 7 of them, focus on different demographic groups, is that we're really focusing on what's happening internally in the firm and also what's happening out in community. So really, Women on the Move is really focused on thinking about how do we help advance women professionally and personally.
I love it. So tell me about this beautifully updated banking branch here on Crenshaw.
That was really important. A part of our racial equity commitment was to build in place for Chase. So being able to revamp this beautiful space, to be able to welcome community members, today anyone, nonprofit, organization, school can actually do events in our community center that we're sitting in here for free. Yes, people come inside, grab a coffee, use the Wi-Fi. It's free.
Yes, Maisha Cairo in the community for KBLA with JP Morgan Chase.
If you have certain chronic conditions such as
heart disease,
asthma,
diabetes,
and you're 19 years of age or older,
52,
36,
42,
you may be at increased risk for pneumococcal pneumonia. Ask your doctor or pharmacist about getting vaccinated with Prevnar 20, pneumococcal 20-valent conjugate vaccine, a Pfizer vaccine that can help protect against pneumococcal pneumonia in just 1 dose. Prevnar 20 is approved for adults to help prevent infections from 20 strains of the bacteria that cause pneumococcal pneumonia. Continued approval may depend on a supportive study. Don't get Prevnar 20 if you've had a severe allergic reaction to the vaccine or its ingredients. Adults with weakened immune systems may have a lower response to the vaccine. The most commonly reported side effect was pain at the injection site. For additional common side effects and full prescribing information, please call 1-855-213-2138 or visit Prevnar20.com.
I'm going to ask my doctor
about getting vaccinated
with Prevnar 20.
Last minute shopping? Good thing Ulta Beauty's first on your list. From Gotta Have It ready-to-go kits from Fenty and Benefit to cult favorite mascaras to simple yet perfect Ulta Beauty gift cards. We have gifts everyone will love this season. So get shopping, because our kind of holiday is you having your kind of holiday. Hurry to an Ulta Beauty near you or buy online and pick up in store. Ulta Beauty, the possibilities are beautiful.
Ew, gotta get rid of this old Backstreet Boys t-shirt.
Tell me why.
Because it stinks, boys.
Tell me why.
I've washed it so many times, but the odor won't come out.
Tell me why.
No, you tell me why I can't get rid of this odor.
Have you tried new Downy Rinse and Refresh? It doesn't just cover up odors, it helps remove them.
Wow, it worked, guys.
Yeah.
Downy Rinse and Refresh removes more odor in 1 wash than the leading value detergent in 3 washes. Find it wherever you buy laundry products.
Conversations that matter. You're listening to Tavis Smiley on KBLA Talk 1580.
Our guest in this hour is Dr. Jennifer Mullan. So pleased to have her. Her new book about to drop, in the not too distant future. We'll tell you more about that a little bit later in this hour. The book is called Decolonizing Therapy: Oppression, Historical Trauma, and Politicizing Your Practice. As you can tell by that first 15 minutes, we're going to need every minute of this hour to try to unpack what's in this text, and I'm honored to have the chance to interrogate her about her work and witness. Let me start with this, Dr. Mullan. It seems to me that given what you laid out a moment ago, all the names that we call upon, Freud on down the list, when we talk about therapy, and again, something none of us ever processed, it seems to me that it's almost impossible for therapy to not be colonized at some level, given what we know about those who have written about it, those who are quoted all the time, those who are taught to persons who are learning this stuff, like you and all your colleagues in the industry, in the business. So it's almost hard to imagine that it would not be colonized at some level. But you tell me.
Absolutely, Tavis. Yeah, it is. And it's sort of like looking at racism, right? Or sort of like understanding that, hey, this is what I'm doing this work in, but how can I start undoing it?
Mm-hmm.
But it is near impossible, right? It is near impossible initially because our education has been predominantly an extremely colonial one, right? Highlighting what professionalism looks like and what it doesn't. Highlighting what someone's hair supposedly needs to look like, right? Like what kind of diction you need to have, how they want us to dress or not. You know, I've had really well-intentioned, good-meaning therapists continue to harm or traumatize the people that they work with by asking them to continue to look at their thoughts or look at how they're thinking about things differently. And sure, sometimes that's really helpful. And other times what individuals are bringing into therapy and bringing into their everyday lives are completely something that is a learned response that has been passed down unconsciously from parents, grandparents, aunties, and uncles, and that has been passed down to them. So some of us are still in survival.
Yeah.
Right? Some of us are still in survival. We're not even thinking about thriving. I don't know about you, but I know my parents were thinking about making ends meet.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
They were thinking about, you know, how to make sure I get to school, how to make sure there's food or meat on the table. They were thinking about how to pay their car note. They weren't thinking about all their feelings about ... Right? And if they were pushing some of that away or doing the best they could to survive and get through. But a lot of us had some very intense things happen to us throughout childhood, right? And a lot of our parents had very intense things happen to them throughout childhood. And then if we go back even further and look at institutions and structures like the transatlantic slave trade, right? Like Brown versus Board of Education, Plessy versus Ferguson, all policies that we could keep going. I could make lists and lists and lists, right, of all the ways that structures and policies have continued to not support the physical, mental, financial, emotional well-being of Black people today.
Yeah. So critique for me, this is getting rich and I'm getting excited. Critique for me, before I move forward, the structures and systems that are presently in place and have been obviously for, for a long time, that keep Black folk in particular from getting the best help. Let's just critique the structures and systems, and I want to follow up on that.
Absolutely. Yeah, so as somebody who worked for an inner city counseling center at a university with students at and below poverty level, many first generation, either Caribbean, Central American, Arab, Black identified, I can tell you for a fact that, number one, within our communities and systems and structures, we're taught over and over again, whether it's conscious or not, that therapy ain't for us, especially if you're growing up a little bit poor, right? Right? Or that you need to, and no shade to this, because sometimes it can be helpful, or you need to pray it away, right? But that there's something super, super wrong with you if you're going to get therapy. But then after that hurdle, and after maybe we're exposed to individuals around us that are realizing, well, wait a minute, this is normal, this is okay. I can talk about how I'm feeling. I can talk about this anxiety. We're then dealing with the financial aspect, right? And we're also dealing with half the time school systems, whether you're in very affluent schools or not, that continue to only have one therapist, one psychologist per school, per elementary school, per high school. And so a lot of the kids who do need to talk things out are also learning that people aren't available for them, right? And if kids, quote unquote, act out or misbehave, particularly if they're darker skinned, Black kids, right? And males, we see this at higher percentage rates. Anytime there's acting out, what do you think is the first thing that's happening? Security cards coming, right? Call the police officers, right? And I can tell you that I've had first graders, beautiful young Black boys, first graders, literally be escorted out by police, right? For throwing over a desk because they were having a tantrum because they didn't get the right color, right? And so we know that Black kids are policed significantly more. And we know, unfortunately, for many of us through our whole lifetimes, but also 2020 really highlighted with the violent murders of George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery, and even Tamir Rice and Breonna Taylor, and we could keep going, right? These very public murders have also highlighted that it's not even safe to go for a run, right? And so that's part of it. And then another part, if we really hone in even further within mental health, we see that, again, because how therapists are trained, that if someone is saying, I'm really enraged and I'm effing pissed off and I'm really sad and this doesn't work for me, therapists start to feel like, ooh, they're a little aggressive. Oh, maybe they need a higher level of care or treatment. So I can't tell you how often individuals are carted out, away, their thoughts, behaviors, feelings are minimized, and at that, there's not enough actually, Black therapists that look like people, right, in and around, unless you have money and unless you're wealthy, right? There are people that can afford a Black therapist that looks like them, but as we said before initially, does that mean that they understand how colonization has impacted their own ways of doing therapy and the lives of those people?
This is obviously part of the text as well, Decolonizing Therapy, your new book that's about to drop. Obviously, you tell it, and we hear and learn more about your journey, which is what I expected, of course. But, and I should mention that Dr. Mullan is affectionately nicknamed the Rage Doctor by her peers and by her clients. They call it the Rage Doctor. We'll unpack that a little bit later in this hour, I suspect. But I want to share a story of something that Harry Belafonte, Mr. B, as I call him, a dear friend of mine. I've just been blessed and honored in my career to have met and talked to pretty much everybody, and some of these persons have become dear friends of mine over the years. And Harry Belafonte, Mr. B, again, as I call him, is one of those persons. And he once said to me, Dr. Mullan, Tavis, always keep this in mind, that you are trying to advance. You are trying to get people to see and to hear and to wrestle with an Afrocentric frame. Everything you're doing and everything you're advancing is inside of an Afrocentric frame, but you're trying to advance that in a Eurocentric space. You're trying to get folk to wrestle with, to see the world through a different prism, to appreciate, to embrace, to revel in, and to see Black humanity and Black dignity. All the stuff you're trying to do, trying to advance this Afrocentric frame, but you're doing it in a Eurocentric space, be that NPR or PBS or ABC or CNN, wherever you are, LA Times, New York Times, Time Magazine, all the things I've done and been a part of. You're doing this in an Afrocentric space, in a Eurocentric space, even as you're trying to get them to see through an Afrocentric prism. And he offered some advice to me professionally in my media work, my broadcast work, about how to do that better. I'll leave that for another time. The point I'm making is that you were doing the same thing. And that's what I thought about when I saw this book, Decolonizing Therapy. Does Mr. B's formulation resonate with you?
So deeply. I'm over here nodding my head and like, trying not to make all these sounds because, to be honest, that's how it came about, right? It came about because I needed this at 18, 19, right? I needed this probably earlier in my life. I needed this when I was angry, disconnected, and I was able to find some small spaces, but eventually, growing out of them, especially when the as I call it, the caucasity, right? That colonial white. I say caucasity all the time. I don't know why, because I'm like, that's some Caucasian stuff right there. This belief, right, that the way that we're supposed to walk in the world, think, act, dress, it's all modeled. Of course, many of us feel like we have imposter syndrome, right? Of course, we're dealing sometimes from a scarcity mindset. I don't know if I could do this. I don't know. I don't know if I have it in me. Well, of course, that's all there because, as the amazing Mr. Belafonte said, we're over here trudging through the mud of Caucasiousness, right? We're trudging through. They have their own trauma histories that they need to deal with, their own guilt and shames that need to be dealt with in order for this humanity, this world to evolve and grow psychologically, right? Think about all that level of narcissism and unhealthiness that might have come up for them, and that's their issues. And I'm thinking for us, it's our time to thrive. And so me coming up, a lot of what was happening was, well, Jennifer, you're being oppositional, right? We know that Black kids are diagnosed with oppositional defiant disorder. They're diagnosed with intermittent explosive disorder. Even if you don't know what that is, listen to the words of it, right? Like they're diagnosed with conduct disorder 8 to 9 times more than white kids, right? That might be displaying the same exact behaviors. I also know that a lot of, in certain parts of what is now known as the U.S., depending on fourth grade test scores for Black boys, they're deciding how many state penitentiaries they may need to put out there, right, in the surrounding areas, how many they need to build in 10 years based on test scores of fourth grade Black boys, right? So these systems are structured and set up to continue to expect for us on some emotional, psychological level to fail. And I know that as a therapist and coming up in very white spaces, I kept saying to myself, there's got to be a better way.
Yeah.
You know, and I would sit in sessions with people of color, right? And they would be like, Dr. Jen, like, I love that we get to come in here and you get to be you and I get to be me and we could talk about some real ish rather than always feel like I have to put on a facade. And that meant a lot to me.
When we come forward, I want to come back to this notion of a better way. And I want to juxtapose that better way, which I do believe exists, and that's what her book is all about, Decolonizing Therapy. I want to talk about the better way, but juxtapose that against this other notion of whether or not these structures and systems are still in place today where therapy is colonized. Is that born of, how might I put it, ignorance or arrogance? There's the existence of these structures and systems that yet remain. Is that in this moment more ignorance or more arrogance? A lot more to talk about. The book is called Decolonizing Therapy, Oppression, Historical Trauma, and Politicizing Your Practice. We'll tell you how you can get your copy on pre-order before the book even drops. Our guest is the author of the book, Dr. Jennifer Mullan, on KBLA Talk 1580.
We may be LA's newest talk station, but when you're punching above your weight, it's not about whether you can throw a punch. Can you take a punch? We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. And we don't black down.
I'm Ree Harris, and here's the latest from the Black Information Network. A well-known Chicago priest is back at church after being cleared for another allegation of child abuse. Father Michael Flagler told his parishioners at St. Abina Church, "It's good to be home."
I thank you for standing by me and believing in me. That you know who I am for 47 years.
Eruptions of the world's biggest volcano are slowing on Hawaii's Big Island, and it's been downgraded from a warning to a watch. Trey Thomas has the details.
The U.S. Geological Survey's Hawaiian Volcano Observatory reported over the weekend that the eruption on Mauna Loa's northeast rift zone was continuing, but lava output and volcanic gas eruptions were greatly reduced. I'm Trey Thomas.
And that's the latest. I'm Ree Harris on your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
Sigler work in Glendale, a busy drive in Paramount, and Torrance. It's troubles on that 405 north at Western, left lane with a crash as far back as Avalon Boulevard, coming away from the Carson area, a very busy drive. On the 710 north at Rosecrans, that's Paramount, left lane with a crash. We're loaded up here from at least that 91. Glendale, it's a wreck on the 134 west at Glendale Avenue. Crashed the off-ramp there. They've shut down that ramp as the vehicles over the embankment were busy from at least the 2 freeway. Silver Lake, Atwater Village, your 5 north at the 2. Look out for a stalled vehicle in the right lane, coming away from Maine, the busy drive.
Perk up your holidays with one of the Coffee Bean's signature holiday drinks, like the Peppermint Mocha Cream Cold Brew with a frosty cream cap, or the Macadamia White Chocolate Ice Blended Drink. Add whip if you're feeling extra. Sip into the holidays and treat yourself at the Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf today.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Lakers got strong performances from LeBron James and Anthony Davis in a 7-point win at Detroit. The win snapped a 3-game losing streak and helped the Lakers finish 3-3 on their 6-game road trip through the Eastern Conference. LeBron led the Lakers with 35 points. AD had a monster game. 34 points, 15 rebounds, 7 assists, and 2 steals. The Lakers are back home Tuesday night to play Boston. The Celtics have the NBA's best record at 21-6. The Chargers hold off Miami for a 23-17 win at SoFi. Congratulations to the 12-1 Philadelphia Eagles. They are the first team this season to clinch a spot in the NFL playoffs. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. This sports report was brought to you by MVP Accident Attorneys. When it comes to your settlement, we're slam dunk. Call 833-MVP-WINS or check their website at themvp.com for a free case review.
When you're the victim of a car accident, hiring the right law firm can be the difference between a rewarding settlement and striking out. Call the pros at MVP Accident Attorneys at 833-MVP-WINS for your free consultation.
Call on me, your MVP.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
The Institute for Diversity Certification is all about the 3 Ds: dedication, determination, and discipline. Learn more about our globally recognized diversity certification program today by calling 1-800-983-6192. Again, 1-800-983-6192, or visit diversitycertification.org. As the #1 organization for certified diversity professionals and also certified diversity executive credentials, diversitycertification.org will provide an opportunity for you to demonstrate dedication to the field, determination to make progress, and more discipline to your process. Go today and learn more about the diversity certification system. Call 1-800-983-6192. Again, 1-800-983-6192. Or go to diversitycertification.org. That's diversitycertification.org. The standard of excellence, equity, diversity, and inclusion.
3-time WNBA champions, the Los Angeles Sparks, jump into their 27th season this summer with the most games ever in league history. Every seat in crypto is an incredible ticket into an experience of world-class professional basketball, jam-packed with in-game entertainment. Now is the time to get ahead of the holidays. Don't be the person grabbing a gas station gift card. Impress your fam and friends with an unforgettable experience. Secure your seats now at lasparks.com/tickets.
KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dominique DePrima, host of First Things First, weekday mornings from 6 to 9. We'll do a deep dive tomorrow on the latest science on RSV, COVID, and the flu with Dr. Cosette Lyons-Jones. Plus headlines and hot topics. It's a Talking Point Tuesday, only on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where everybody is somebody and nobody is a stranger. You belong here.
Welcome back. I'm Tavis Smiley. Our phone number 1-800-920-1580. Excuse me, 1-800-920-1580. You are listening to KBLA Talk 1580. So glad to have you on with us in this hour. Our guest in this hour is Dr. Jennifer Mullan. Her new book is called Decolonizing Therapy, Oppression, Historical Trauma, and Politicizing Your Practice. You can order it now wherever you get your books. It doesn't drop for a few more months. But we are delighted to have her in conversation with us now in advance of the book's release, and hope you are enjoying this conversation and learning as I am. I said before news, traffic, and sports, I made reference to the fact that she is affectionately nicknamed, and I do say affectionately nicknamed, as the Rage Doctor by her peers and clients. Where'd that come from, Dr. Mullan?
That came from, my ability to help people hold really big enraged feelings. Mm-hmm. But specifically, usually there were kids on the units that we'd work in that were always acting out, quote unquote, and they would send them to me, and then they would come back completely grounded, saying, I want to go meditate with Dr. Jen. Mm-hmm. And then even my college students, I would have retreats with them. And we would deal with our rage, understandably, right? There's a lot to be enraged about. And I think rage is often misunderstood. It's really a healthy, normal response to block goals and obstacles. And it's a really beautiful, sacred protector and boundary. It doesn't mean we have to cuss people out and hurt them, but it does mean that we're allowed to feel those really big, overwhelming feelings.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. We all are enraged at different levels and in different ways, but we're all enraged. And frankly, let me just be clear about this. If you're black and you ain't enraged about something, there's something wrong with you. I mean, that's just my assessment. I'm not the doctor here, but it seems to me that if you're black living in this space and you're not enraged about something or some things, plural, then something is wrong with you. I once had a teacher say to me, and I've never forgotten it, Dr. Mullan, this is a line that I come to all the time, and I find myself asking this of others. And the question that was put to me is simply this: Tavis, what is your quarrel with the world? What is your quarrel with the world. There's no way that you can live in this world and not have some kind of quarrel with the world. And whatever that quarrel is, it ought to be something that enrages you about the status, about the condition of your community, of your country, of the world in which we live. So if you're black and you ain't mad about nothing, then there's something wrong with you, it seems to me. But I know one of the things, though, that's key in your work, specifically as it relates to people of color, black people, is this notion of unlearning, as you call it, unlearning. I know that unlearning for you is an essential component of addressing the profound effects of systemic inequities, historical and intergenerational trauma on our mental health. But talk to me about this notion of unlearning and how one goes about unlearning.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And number one, I would say is that, structural racism, lateral violence, we know that this reaches back right to the beginnings of U.S. history, right? Like to the very beginnings of the colonization of the land, right? And when I think about its effects on our institutions, on our economies, how it dwells within our culture, sort of like a virus sitting and waiting to spread, the first thing that comes up for me is this sense of, we want to do it different, right? I want to get out from under this sort of shell. And when I think of unlearning, it's sort of like someone taking off the blindfolds, or like a horse having those blindfolds on so they could have tunnel vision, and saying, look, there's all this other sort of vastness of material, of information, of ways of being that we already know inherently from our elders, from our people, from our culture. And now we're going to sort of let that have a front and center voice to what we thought was supposed to be the way that we live and engage with each other, right? So the very structures of racism and all these policies have sort of infected us in some way, shape, or form, right? And I do believe that these impacts and effects of colonization are a slow burn. So the unlearning process is one in which we, say, oh, whoa, there's a new way. There's something else here that I need to learn, right? That might come across as a jolt. Maybe somebody says something to us, we read something, but we have that, aha moment. I would say next what starts to happen is an individual starts to seek out more information, right? I want to know more about this. How does this, reflect and stand with what I've already learned? Sometimes there's a painful process, and that's sort of where I come in. People sometimes are saying, wow, I'm starting to realize the way that I've been taught to do therapy is really, really harmful, not only to the people that I'm serving, but to myself. I'm burned out. I had this many clients on my caseload. I'm not resting. I'm having all these health issues. What do I do? So then we start to sort of daydream and think about the future. What would it feel like in your body? What would it look like to no longer believe that you need to act in these ways in order to be worthy, to be lovable? What would it look like to believe that the depression that you're feeling is not something that's your fault, but is a really healthy, understandable impact of tons of oppression around you, current day and historically, and that your depression is just trying to tell you something? So we get curious, right? Part of the unlearning process is getting curious, and I think that especially in like a very Eurocentric world, right? It's we don't get a lot of time to be curious. And a lot of us who were curious as kids got in a lot of trouble for this kind of curiosity.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
So, but that's why it leads to the next part of like, find you a crew, a community, a learning cubicle, whatever you want to call it, a pod, a grassroots organization, a church book club, like something that resonates where you can begin to explore 1, 2, 3 different concepts and ideas that we're in the process of unlearning together, right? So we can be held accountable, and so that we can also have fun and be in community while doing that.
You mentioned the white gaze a couple of times in this conversation. I want to come to that now because it seems to me that many of us, and again, you're the therapist, you're the expert here. I'm just a lowly talk show host asking questions, but it seems to me that so many of us, Dr. Mullan, are, how about I put this, that we are either seduced by or we find ourselves frozen by this normative white gaze. So that normative white gaze either freezes us on the one hand, or sort of seduces us on the other hand. And in either incident, whether one is seduced or whether one is frozen by this normative white gaze, it causes us to not be able to deal with the trauma, the historical trauma, the oppression that so many of us have to endure. So when we come forward, I want to ask you, Dr. Mullan, about that normative white gaze and whether or not you think too many of us are seduced by it or frozen by it. And in either case, again, it allows us to sort of be stuck, not getting the kind of help we need to deal with the oppression, the trauma, and the like. We'll put that question to Dr. Jennifer Mullan when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Be sure to like and follow Tavis Smiley at The Real Tavis Smiley and get Twitter updates at Tavis Smiley. The conversation continues when we come forward.
The state task force is getting closer to identifying what reparations will look like in California. Maisha Cairo here with your K-Black Minute News, brought to you by CaliforniaBlackMedia.org. The California Task Force to study and develop reparation proposals for African Americans will be conducting its last meeting of 2022 on December 14th and 15th at Oakland City Hall Chambers, beginning at 9 a.m. with time for public comment. Meetings will be live streamed on the task force website or on ETM Media YouTube. Task Force Chairperson Kamala Moore says that the next meeting is of high importance and will include an in-depth conversation about redress and repair. So far, the task force has determined a conservative estimate of 2 million African Americans in California who have ancestors that were enslaved here in the U.S. They are still determining what or how much compensation should be. Let's start the conversation on social media pages at KBLA 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 invites you to join us in celebrating the season of giving by being part of the solution. As we enjoy great food, family, warmth, and well wishes in whatever our festive tradition may be, we share the beauty of the season by reaching out to the less fortunate. Please help us to help others with the KBLA Cover the Houseless Cozy Community Coat and Blanket Drive. All you have to do is drop off new or clean, gently used winter coats and blankets in the KBLA lobby during business hours, now through December 20th. All of the coats and blankets will be donated to unsheltered individuals and families experiencing houselessness. Simply bring your donation to 4434 Crenshaw Boulevard in Los Angeles, near Vernon Avenue, from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. weekdays. That's 4434 Crenshaw in historic Leimert Park. During the holidays and every day, let's remember, we keep us safe. We keep us warm. We are the safety net, and together we can cover the unsheltered. Get caught up in the spirit of the season, the spirit of love. Make a difference with your friends at KBLA Talk 1580.
When you're the victim of a car accident, hiring the right law firm can be the difference between a rewarding settlement and striking out. Call the pros at MVP Accident Attorneys at 833-MVP-WINS for your free consultation.
Call on me, your MVP.
At Cedars-Sinai, we're honored to be named the #1 hospital in California and the #2 hospital in the nation in U.S. News & World Report's Best Hospitals Honor Roll. We're also proud to be named #1 in 6 specialties in Los Angeles. Thank you to our physicians, nurses, academic leaders, and thousands of other team members who bring their best to Cedars-Sinai every day. Learn more about our top-ranked care at cedars-sinai.org.
Broadcasting live from Leimert Park, USA. Welcome back to your home for unapologetically progressive radio, KBLA Talk 1580.
Continuing now with the author of the forthcoming text, Decolonizing Therapy, Oppression, Historical Trauma, and Politicizing Your Practice, Dr. Jennifer Mullan. I was saying before that break, Dr. Mullan, that you referenced this notion of white gaze a couple of times earlier in our conversation. I want to come back to that right quick, watching my clock here. It seems to me, and you're the therapist and not me, but that too many of us are seduced by that normative white gaze, which causes us to behave in certain ways. I'll leave that alone. Others of us are frozen by that normative white gaze, which prevents us from getting the kind of help we need to deal with the oppression, the trauma, and the like. But say a word to me about that white gaze, since you raised it a couple times in this conversation.
Absolutely. I remember first hearing about, I think it was Toni Morrison, right? Ancestor Toni Morrison talking about what I'm interested in is writing without that gaze, without that white gaze. And that really hit me. And I realized that's part of why I do my work is I want to do this work in a way that makes healing for Black people and for Black therapists that doesn't just include the approval, the applause, or necessarily the notions or the historical violence of whiteness and the white gaze. And I think many of us operate in this world, consciously or not, with this assumption that the default, that the standard, right, is what is seen as white, right, or what is seen as acceptable by white standards. And we see this in innumerable ways, right? Some more prevalent in their manifestations than others, but oftentimes with policing of our bodies. We see this in what is seen as perfectionistic or professional. There's hair discrimination. Corporations often have this like vague appearance policies also that is sort of one size fits all, right? So the white gaze lands everywhere, but including how we do therapy. A really, really fast, quick story. I remember going to my director at the time, who was an amazing Black woman. She now is retired. A shout out to Dr. Bisla Gallagher. And I remember saying to her, you know, I'm dealing with this young woman that is not dealing with a lot of her rage, and she's holding a lot. Her brother was just shot by the police. She's stuck. She's really stuck. Here's what's going on. I want permission to take her out to the parking lot and to like let us scream it out. You know, she's looking at me like, she's like, Jen, okay, I trust you. Do your thing. Do your thing. I don't know what you're doing, but it seems to work. So you go ahead, you know. And she had so much trust for me. And I remember calling public safety saying, hey, you're going to see two people screaming at the top of their lungs, and please know that it's healthy, and because if not, we didn't want them to come and arrest us and hurt us. And we went out there, and she was like, oh, well, what are people are going to think? And I'm like, what people? Who? And then she looked at me. She was like, well, you know, white people. And I remember thinking, there it is again, right? That white gaze, that fear that we're going to be too much. And every time historically that we have been too much, or even now when we're too much, we get a slap on the wrist, or we get citationed, or we get written up, or we get fired. Right? And so, needless to say, she healthily screamed her lungs off. She sobbed. We hugged, and that is part of decolonizing therapy too. Not exactly that, but that's just an example of like, how do we step outside of that white theory and that white box and that way of just diagnosing, and step into healing instead of just treating.
As you were talking, I was thinking about something I've said many times to family and friends, and even in presentations. To my mind, being Black is a perpetual audition. Being Black is a perpetual audition. I digress. Our remaining moments with Dr. Mullan when we come forward, and we'll talk about a better way. A better way. Her book is called Decolonizing Therapy, and we're talking about it on KBLA Talk 1580.
We don't try to be all things to all people. We just remain true to who we are. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580.
Man, I slept.
New ZQuil Pure Z's Restorative Herbal Sleep is made for people who are tired of being tired.
I've never slept like this before. I've never woken up like this before.
A melatonin-free sleep aid made with a botanical blend that contains clinically studied and effective valerian root, hops, and passion flower, shown to help promote better restorative sleep. ZQuil Pure Z's Restorative Herbal Sleep. Sleep this good, feel this good. Available at retailers near you.
At Social Security, we are always thinking of ways to save you time and make things easier. That's why we created My Social Security. A My Social Security account allows you to access your earnings history and benefits information, request a replacement Social Security card, get a proof of income letter, estimate and apply for benefits, and more. Save time. Go online. Open a My Social Security account at ssa.gov/myaccount. Social Security. Securing today and tomorrow.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, reminding you when we fight, we win. Asian Americans Advancing Justice is the nation's largest legal and civil rights organization for Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders. Founded in 1983 as the Asian Pacific American Legal Center, Advancing Justice LA serves more than 15,000 individuals and organizations every year. Their mission is to advocate for civil rights, provide legal services and education, and build coalitions to positively influence and impact Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders, and to create a more equitable and harmonious society. To volunteer, make a donation, or seek assistance, visit advancingjustice-la.org. That's advancingjustice-la.org. Or call 888-349-9695. 888-349-9695. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Where do holiday happenings take over every aisle? Lowe's, actually. Right now, you'll save big on everything you need for the holiday season. Get up to 50% off select pre-lit Christmas trees and holiday living LED string lights. Plus, save on your gift list with up to 50% off select tools and accessories. The holidays are here, and so are the savings. Only at Lowe's. Offers valid through 12/14. Selection varies by location while supplies last.
Interrogating your assumptions and expanding your inventory of ideas. Let's get back to Tavis Smiley on KBLA Talk 1580.
Got about 4 minutes left, just 4 minutes left in conversation with Dr. Jennifer Mullan. I've enjoyed this immensely and learned so much, as I hope you have as well. We can't do much about the past, but we do, in fact, have some say about our future. The book is called Decolonizing Therapy, Oppression, Historical Trauma, and Politicizing Your Practice. What is the better way, Dr. Jennifer Mullan?
Yes, Tavis. A better way involves learning our past, literally. I think a lot of us sometimes, because of the trauma of the past, there is this fear to know more about the land that our people came from. And sometimes that's hard to do, and sometimes that's possible. You know, you have African ancestry DNA and 23andMe, and they're not always 100% accurate, but it's there for us to start getting curious and open up that door. We can also start to be part of something larger, right? And that, again, that involves, for those of us that are doing therapy, being part of group therapy or being part of more shamanic or group practices, starting to look at the spiritual, be open to new realities, be open to new ways that were actually pretty old. They're not quite so new, but they might be new for some people. But start getting comfortable with unlearning that Eurocentric gaze around, oh, that's dark, that's bad, we don't do that. Meanwhile, many of our people have engaged in certain practices for thousands and thousands of years, and current day therapy is co-opting that anyway and making money off of it. So start to learn things in relationship to nature, in relationship to the land, in relationship to how you wake, how you go to sleep. How does that relate to your ancestors? I would also say it's important to do a little bit of work with a really conscious, trauma, somatic informed therapist that does have or is working on a decolonial lens, right? Because it is a work in process.
Right.
This isn't something we do overnight. This is long haul work that future generations and descendants are going to benefit from immensely. And so work with someone that can help you look at this trauma timeline, as I call it, right? That can help you look at what has happened throughout your life that has been impacted by white-bodied supremacy, that has been impacted by histories of colonization and other forms of isms.
Right.
And what kind of isms were your ancestors also impacted by, right? Were they displaced? Were they forced to leave? Was there a lot of violence? Was there domestic violence in your family, in your timeline? So work with someone to slowly unpack some of that. And one of the last things I want to put out there is find place to move your body if that feels good to you, if you can, right? So trauma resides in the body. We can't just think our way out of this. Although this can sound really heady, we have to embody what it is we're feeling. So whether it's my rage workshops or other decolonizing workshops, I ask people to hum. We put on music. I tell them to go throw on some Prince after a workshop and dance it out, even if they don't got rhythm, right? We have to embody it. You know, a lot of, I don't know about y'all, but like my grandparents would hum or rock back and forth. That's self-soothing, right? Those are things that have been passed down generationally that we don't even think about, that are accessible and easy to access. So find a way to get in that body, allow yourself to feel what's happening in your body. And if you have any aches and pains in your body, ask that part of your body, what are you trying to tell me? What are you here to do? And then love on it as much as you can. So those are a few techniques and things we can do to shift it.
There's a whole lot more than that, and that's rich, but there's a whole lot more in this book. It's called Decolonizing Therapy, Oppression, Historical Trauma, and Politicizing Your Practice, written by Dr. Jennifer Mullan, clinical psychologist. Dr. Mullan, good to have you on this program, and just because you teed it up, we're going to play a little Prince on the way out. Good to have you on this program. All the best to you and happy holidays.
Thank you. Thank you.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Doug Davis, and here's the latest from a Black Information Network. Students grades 6 through 12 attending public schools in